Hey, this is Greg at GO-AUTOWORKS again. I'm back this time with another quick video to try to answer some questions that have come up that a lot of people have requested, I guess, me address to try to help along with installs and builds. What it is vacuum routing on your application, mostly turbo builds where you have to add additional vacuum lines for whatever accessory you're going to use. So what I'm going to try to do is walk through and show you some of the better ways to run vacuum routing and what you would connect to these vacuum lines, and just a neater way that's going to be reliable and give you a clean vacuum source all the time. Now, as far as vacuum goes, typically on a Honda or any turbo application where you boosted a car that wasn't originally turboed, you're going to be short on vacuum sources, and you're going to add items that need a vacuum to go to them. So typically it's going to be like your fuel pressure regulator, which is going to have its own vacuum from the factory, but typically that is going to be the only vacuum source that's could be used for something else. But you have your fuel pressure regulator, your boost gauge, your blow-off valve, and then you have your boost controller and wastegate. They're all going to use vacuum. So each one will have its own independent line. The old school way would be to go in and run T's, which I try not to do T's. I don't really suggest people to use a bunch of small vacuum T's because they're prone to either cracking under heat if you're using the little plastic ones you get from the parts store. They'll either crack under heat or vibration or come loose and cause boost issues. So I try to steer clear of those. The best solution is going to be to run a vacuum block or vacuum log manifold, which I'll show you one of those in a second, especially if you're using a stock intake manifold or stock style intake manifold. Other intake manifold options that I'll show you will come with additional ports to allow you to run vacuum from the plenum, which is a great source. It's ideally the same as running a vacuum manifold. It gives you all the ports in one spot to give you a strong signal. So I'll go ahead and show you a couple of these to give you a better idea of what I'm trying to explain to you. Okay, as for vacuum manifolds, there's so many on the market. I like to use what I like to use and stick to the brands that I like. So we use Golden Eagle most of the time, and we also use Vibrant manifolds. We used to sell our own that I had CNC'd. I just don't do them anymore, just because again there's so many, and I hate to put that money into something that gets lost in the mix. But anyway, I use a lot of Golden Eagle. I have a pair of them right here, which what these do, can you see that? It's upside down. But anyway, what the intake, the vacuum manifold will do is tee into the brake booster, which is going to be the strongest signal on the car, and it runs it into the manifold, which means you can then go from the bottom of the manifold and supply a strong signal to anything that you want to connect to it. I'm partial to these because the Golden Eagle manifolds come threaded 1/8, but they aren't drilled all the way through. So instead of, if you only have to use, say, 2 items, all you do is drill a hole into 2, and you don't have to worry about running caps and block off plugs in the bottom because they're not drilled through until you get ready to use them. So I use these, and I also have the barb kits, which comes with a T to tee into the brake booster. That is going to be the absolute best way to source the vacuums for all the accessories, unless you're using an intake manifold, which I'll show you a couple of those now. Okay, what I've grabbed here are 3 of the basic upgrade intake manifolds for your D or B series, which is going to be the Skunk 2 Ultra Race, the Skunk 2 Ultra Street, and the Golden Eagle sheet metal plenum intake manifold. I picked up these 3 because these 3 are going to offer the additional ports in the plenum, which is ideally the same as putting the ports or running the ports from a vacuum manifold. They all go into the back of the plenum. You'll see the 1/8 and the 1/4 inch is usually used as the brake booster signal, and that's an IAT sensor. But they're all the same. They offer these plugs to have additional sources for vacuum, which again is going to be the same as running the vacuum manifold and having the ports coming off the brake booster signal. Now what I've done here is I've gone through and grabbed a few options of vacuum related parts that are going to add it to the car. Like I said earlier, the main thing you're going to add to the car that's going to need vacuum is going to be the blow-off valve, which this is a tile Q. And a great part about doing a vacuum manifold is you can match up the air fitting size, whether you're using a barb or if you're using like a push lock fitting that I have here. You can go through and match them up so that you're not trying to reduce or go up or down in vacuum hose size trying to make something work. And that's what you get into when you're trying to do T's. You're trying to mix and match vacuum IDs or interior diameter of the vacuum hose in spots that you typically shouldn't have to do. So if you could put a vacuum manifold on the car, you can run that straight hose to the vacuum block and not worry about any T's or any mixed match hose sizes. But like I said, you have the blow-off valve, tile Q. We do a lot of HKS. We do have the precision valves. We have the Grady RZs and Grady Type R valves. They're all going to use a vacuum source to work properly. Tile just being my favorite and in my opinion the best valve to use. Also, each turbo compressor housing is going to basically have a vacuum port on them. Most of the times it will already be there. Some of them they won't be there. That is a internet debatable thing as to whether or not you should use the compressor housing for your pressure signal for your boost controller. I use it. It's there for a reason. 99 times out of 100, this port is going to be 1/8 NPT. This is a Turbonetic 61 millimeter compressor housing that we used to use in our TGA turbos. It's the same on the bigger cover. Precision, they put the port here. Typically, it was here on the Turbonetics. Here, it's going to give you the same thing. Same 1/8. The new cover we have for the Garrett GT8s or GT2860s, they've added the port onto this cover. Now, some get confused and think this is a Garrett GTX 3076 Gen 2. This port is not a vacuum port. This is a speed sensor port. But you can see right here, there's a spot that you can add a vacuum signal if you want it to, or you can pull your vacuum signal from the intake manifold block or vacuum block. The same goes for your boost controller solenoid. It will use a vacuum. Most of the time, this vacuum will come from your wastegate. But like I said, some people like to run the vacuum from the intake manifold, whereas there you get a reading from what the intake manifold sees versus reading from the compressor housing, which you see what the turbo's doing. So that's up in the air as to which one you want to see. It's a different debate for a different day. But I use a lot running from the wastegate straight to the solenoid, which I'll show you on the car behind me, or in front of me rather. That's how it's ran on there. Now, like I said, when you get into the car itself, it gets a lot simpler. What you'll have needing vacuum is going to be the blow-off valve, your fuel pressure regulator, and on here your wastegate, which this car is running an internal wastegate, but it still needs vacuum like anything else. So we're going to add the Golden Eagle vacuum manifold to connect the fuel pressure regulator, which it had the factory plug here, but the regulator and the factory port are two different sizes. So what I could do now is take the Golden Eagle manifold and match up the port size to the regulator and not worry about a vacuum leak or an overstretched hose or anything like that. And I'll take it and also run the vacuum from the blow-off valve over to the same block. And on this application, the wastegate already have the boost solenoid plumbed. It's running straight to the solenoid. So I'm getting my vacuum from the compressor housing, which I'll move down and show you that, up to the wastegate solenoid. So it's fairly simple on this car as a layout as a whole. And it's simple on all the cars once you get the vacuum manifold installed because you have to worry about any T's, and you can just run it all to one spot, have it nice and neat, tucked and out the way. Now on this particular app, I went through and actually built all the vacuum hoses for the boost in AN lines. So these are all 4 AN lines that I went through and added additional heat wrap to, and they're going to the towel MVI wastegate. And you can see it's going over to the compressor housing outlet. I just looked over and noticed I forgot to address this. As far as vacuum, we get this asked quite often, even though it's mapped out on Tile's page. Your wastegate will have several ports on it. 2 of the ports are going to be on the lower part of the cap. These are water ports. You can run water through these just like you can run water through a ball bearing cartridge turbo. If you're not going to run water through them, you just leave them open and let air circulate through them. But along with these 2 ports, you have 3 air ports on the lower cap. You will use one of the lower air ports at all time. You have 3 just for flexibility as far as mounting goes. The one that you're using, you will have an air fitting coming out, obviously, and each gate will come with 2 block off caps. You will block the other 2 off. That's mandatory. You have to block off 2 of these and block off one at the top. As far as the top port goes, you will have, this is actually a smaller cap. This is off of MVS, which you can see if it's authentic tile, it will have MVS or MVR engraved on the cap. But you will have the top ports, which if it's just running off of wastegate signal, you will block off one top port, let the other top port vent to the atmosphere. If you are running a boost controller in line, then instead of venting one to the atmosphere, you will run the top over into your boost controller routing of the vacuum hoses. You'll still just block one cap off at the top. So yeah, I forgot to put the wastegate stuff in there, but there you have it. That's basically it. Hopefully I answered some of the questions that you want me to answer in the vacuum routing and how you should or shouldn't do things. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Be sure to like or share the video, like the page, to try to follow and see what upgrades I have coming, what updates. I've got a full review coming on some suspension parts that we have on the way already for the car, along with some exhaust parts as I have to finish the fab on the downpipe, made it to the exhaust, and get everything fit up there. So yeah, if you have any questions, again, this can be a lifesaver, a simplifier, and a very easy solution to getting all your vacuum routed neatly and accurately. So yeah, that's it for now. I'll see y'all next time.